Before dawn on June 6, 1944, a young German naval officer stood in a concrete observation post at the Crisbecq battery on the Normandy coast. Leutnant See Walter Ohmsen raised his Zeiss binoculars and searched the dark line where sea met sky. The glass trembled in his hands. He had been told the channel would protect them. He had been told the Allies could not gather enough ships. What he saw contradicted everything. The entire horizon moved. Steel from end to end. Not a fleet. A seaborne continent. The numbers were beyond German assumptions. Almost 7,000 vessels. Warships. Landing craft. Tugs. Merchantmen. Minesweepers. Crews from 8 Allied nations. At first light, orders reached the battery. Open fire. The Big Czech made Skoda guns of 210 millimeters cracked and hurled their first shells. Drops of water against a coming storm. American cruisers and the battleship USS Nevada answered. The destroyer USS Corey would be lost that morning. Ohmsen and his men had become the first German gunners to engage the Western invasion. What he watched through the rangefinder was not just an armada. It was an equation. Industrial power converted into ships, fuel, shells, radios, and trained crews. The mathematics of defeat advanced at a few knots. The transformation had begun. Hours earlier, at La Roche-Guyon on the Seine, Army Group B staff wrestled with fragmentary reports. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel was in Germany for his wife's birthday. He believed the weather would keep any landing at bay. His chief of staff, General Hans Speidel, listened as messages arrived after midnight. Parachutes over the Cotentin. Troop carriers in the thousands. The 7th Army relayed increasingly urgent calls. General Erich Marx, a veteran of the Eastern Front, recognized danger but could not grasp the scale. German planning had measured Allied strength by German production. That was the mistake. Dawn brought the second shock. Naval gunfire on a scale no German unit had faced. 5 battleships, dozens of cruisers, scores of destroyers. The USS Texas alone would fire hundreds of 14-inch shells, each weighing more than half a ton. In an hour, one ship could deliver more explosive weight than many German regiments held in their depots. Even before the first boat touched sand, Allied warships had poured tens of thousands of shells into coastal defenses. Positions shattered, wires cut, nerves broken. Then the sky filled. Allied aircraft flew almost 15,000 sorties that day. Fighters, fighter bombers, medium bombers, heavy bombers. The Royal Air Force and the United States Army Air Forces had won air supremacy before the first wave. The Luftwaffe could manage only a few hundred sorties in all of France. Major Joseph Priller and his wingman made a single strafing pass over Sword Beach. They fled from swarms of Allied fighters. Air power had become a ceiling of iron. On Omaha Beach, the first American waves stepped into hell. The German 352nd Infantry Division held strong positions on the bluffs. Concrete nests with interlocking fields of fire. At Widerstands Nest 62, Heinrich Severloh worked an MG-42 and later claimed he fired more than 12,000 rounds. He watched men fall and rise and fall again. The tide carried bodies. For a time it appeared the wall would hold. Then American destroyers broke the pattern. With the beachhead near collapse, skippers drove their ships close, to within about 1,000 yards of the sand. USS McCook, USS Carmick, USS Doyle, USS Frankfurt. 5-inch guns barked at point-blank range. Officers on the bridge spotted individual embrasures. Shells walked up the slopes, smashed concrete, and silenced guns. Risk be damned. If one was lost, the next would take its place. To the Germans, ships were scarce treasures. To the Allies, they were instruments, used hard and replaced. Still, the landing craft came, wave after wave. Landing craft tank brought Sherman tanks straight to the beach. The big landing ship tanks beached, dropped their bow doors, and delivered entire companies of armor. DUKW amphibious trucks swam ashore and drove directly inland with ammunition and rations. Bulldozers cut exits, engineers blew gaps in wire. By nightfall, roughly 156,000 Allied soldiers were ashore, most by sea, many by parachute and glider. Vehicles counted in the tens of thousands. Tanks counted in the thousands. Supplies measured in thousands of tons. In one day, German counterattacks crawled into this machine. The 21st Panzer Division was the only armored force near enough to strike on D-Day. It moved late in the afternoon. What should have been a fast thrust became a slow, deadly procession. Air attacks pinned columns to the hedgerows. Naval gunfire, called by forward observers, landed inland with shocking accuracy. The old British battleship HMS Warspite fired 15-inch shells from miles offshore. Steel that could crack any armor plate built in Germany. The message reached every battalion commander. Movement in daylight was suicide. On June 7th, German reconnaissance brought back photographs the staff did not want to accept. The Allies were building, not capturing, harbors, prefabricated piers, phoenix caissons, gooseberry breakwaters made from scuttled ships, floating roadways that rose and fell with the tide. The Mulberry harbors began handling thousands of tons of cargo each day within 2 weeks. The Atlantic Wall had been designed to deny ports. The Allies had removed the need for ports. The deception campaign had worked as designed. Operation Fortitude kept German reserves tied to the Pas de Calais, waiting for General George Patton's fictitious army. Weeks passed as real divisions bled in Normandy. When the truth became undeniable, it was too late. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt is reported to have told Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, "Make peace, you fools! What else can you do?" He was relieved shortly after. Rommel met Hitler at Margiville on June 17th and laid out the facts. Allied air supremacy, ammunition shortages, divisions at 1/3 of strength. No retreat allowed, Hitler said. Rommel left knowing the outcome. Within a month, he would be forced to take poison after the July plot. The campaign ground on. Caen burned under heavy bombers. British and Canadian forces faced the SS Hitler Youth Division and cracked it with massed fire and relentless pressure. American forces turned the hedgerows into a laboratory of improvisation. Welded prongs on tank bows. Radios in every platoon. Artillery on call within minutes. Then came Operation Cobra, a carpet bombardment near St. Lo. Thousands of heavy, medium, and fighter bombers in a single concentrated blow. The shock was physical and psychological. Friendly fire killed American troops, including Lieutenant General Leslie McNair. The attack still broke the German line. The breakout became pursuit. The Falaise pocket closed like a steel gate. German units collapsed into a frantic retreat. Tens of thousands were killed or captured. Hundreds of tanks and assault guns lost. Columns of trucks and horses jammed the lanes. Allied fighter bombers turned them into fields of wreckage. Survivors who slipped out did so as scattered men, not organized formations. After the war, German officers tried to explain what they had faced. They spoke about a new kind of war, not a duel of divisions, but a contest of factories. In 1944, the United States built aircraft by the tens of thousands, tanks by the tens of thousands, trucks by the hundreds of thousands. ammunition by the billions of rounds. Britain and Canada added still more. Add the Soviet Union's output, and the ratio becomes stark. By late 1944, Allied production advantages stood at roughly 5-1. In trucks, 10-1. That disparity rolled across the beaches of Normandy. Technology widened the gap. Proximity fuses made anti-aircraft fire deadly. Radar-directed gunnery put shells on target with first rounds. The DUKW turned water into road. British specialized armor, nicknamed Hobart's Funnies, cleared mines, threw bridges, crushed wire, and blasted bunkers. Engineering replaced blood wherever possible. Naval gunfire became a dread presence. If a German battery exposed itself, a ship miles away would answer with heavy steel. Ships moved. Ships corrected. Ships did not run out. Men like Walter Ohmsen, Hans Speidel, and many others carried the memory. They had watched an industrial system assemble itself before their eyes. Ships, planes, tanks, bulldozers, radiomen, doctors, cooks, replacement crews waiting just over the horizon. Courage mattered. Tactics mattered. But in Normandy, the decisive force was a mass of things and the means to sustain them. The Germans had prepared to fight soldiers. On D-Day, they fought an economy at war.